ගෝඩ වැල්ල යනවා ගෝඩ. ඔන්න.
That was Sri Lanka this weekend. I'm sure you've seen some of those pictures. On Saturday, the presidential palace was overrun. The protesters took control of it. The president, Gotabaya Rajapaksa, was forced to leave. Tonight, as we focus on the state of affairs in the country, let's sum up the situation in 5 videos. Video number 1, you could call it the defining moment. This happened on Saturday. A massive crowd stormed Sri Lanka's presidential palace and the secretariat. This is what it looked like. And let me remind you, this is the official residence of the Sri Lankan president, the most secure building in the country. Tens of thousands of protesters just forced their way in. Who are these protesters? The citizens of Sri Lanka. On Saturday, thousands of them travelled to Colombo from all over the country. Reports say some of them even commandeered trains to get there. In Colombo, they swarmed the government district. Then began a march to the presidential palace. The security officials anticipated this. They barricaded the roads. But the numbers were simply overwhelming. The police tried to contain the protest. They fired shots in the air. They used tear gas. None of it worked. The protesters soon broke through the barricades and stormed into the presidential palace. Where was President Gotabaya Rajapaksa at this point? He'd been evacuated the previous day. We don't know where he is right now. Earlier today, the Speaker of the Sri Lankan Parliament said Gotabaya has fled the country. But soon he retracted the statement. So where is Gotabaya Rajapaksa? Some theories are doing the rounds, which brings us to video number 2. Look carefully. This is the port of Colombo. The ship you see belongs to the Sri Lankan Navy. Some men are loading a lot of luggage in a hurry.
ගෝඩ වැල්ල යනවා ගෝඩ. ඔන්න. දාන බෑග් ටික. ඉවරයි නම් ගන්න වීඩියෝ එක.
This happened when the protesters had surrounded the presidential palace. Was Gotabaya Rajapaksa inside the ship at the time? Did he use the Sri Lankan Navy to flee? Where was the ship going? Who was on board? We do not know, but the Lankan press has been talking about it. According to one report, 2 ships of the Sri Lankan Navy were mobilized. A group of elites boarded these ships at the port of Colombo. A line of luxury vehicles had entered the port. The luggage was moved from those cars into this ship. Again, we do not know who was on the ship. The ship's manifest has not been made public. But it looks like someone important was inside. Later in the day, the situation got out of hand. Let me show you video number 3. This was the home of Sri Lankan Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe. Protesters set it on fire. Ranil Wickremesinghe is facing the wrath of protesters. He took over as Prime Minister just a few weeks back. He also got the charge of the Finance Ministry of Sri Lanka. He took the mantle from Mahinda Rajapaksa, who was forced to resign for the economic crisis. Now, Wickremesinghe had a tough task at hand, bringing the economy back on track. He did not have a magic wand. He was the one talking to the IMF for a bailout, but he was also the Prime Minister chosen by the Rajapaksas. And that went against him. Protesters lost patience with him. First, they overran his official residence, the Temple Trees. Then they set his private home on fire. And all of this happened after Wickremesinghe announced his resignation. So he too will step down. Earlier today, he spoke out. He said he has lost the only house he ever owned, and with it, one of his most valued treasures.
The only house I ever owned is now completely burned down. My biggest wealth and treasure were the 2,500 books in my library. They have been destroyed.
Video number 4, and this is what happened after the protesters entered the presidential palace, a pool party. That's what happened. It did not stop here. They entered different bedrooms. They went through the drawers of the bathrooms. They celebrated in banquet halls. What did they achieve with all of this? The protesters say they wanted to make a point. They wanted to show how politicians still live a life of luxury even when their country is bankrupt. Now they refuse to leave. Video number 5, this is from today. The protesters are still at the presidential palace. The protesters have a new demand. They want Rajapaksa and Wickremesinghe to step down immediately. They've made their point. They've humbled Sri Lanka's political class. And a day after storming the presidential palace, they've also shown how you can be civil in the middle of a crisis. Some of them returned to tidy up, to clean up the mess.